Our presenter tonight for layouts is John Morrison. John grew up in Australia. He was educated to be a journeyman electrician. Came to the US in 1968 and found himself working in sales in the electrical switchgear business because he had had some background of that in Australia. He eventually formed his own company, which designed and installed backup systems for large companies. John is going to share with us an outdoor layout that he's built many years ago. And he's going to share some of the early versions and some of the upgraded versions. So John?
Thank you, Russ, and thanks to all of you for watching and for allowing me to show my Dunkley Northern Railway tonight. The original Dunkley Northern Railway was on the ground. This is a model of a 1950s colonial railway built in a European colony in some undisclosed country. This allows me to operate any type and mixture of equipment that tickles my fancy. I chose 3-foot 6-inch gauge because it's very prevalent in the colonies. It's also a perfect fit for 1/24th scale on number 1 gauge track, and therefore is easy to work with. Building locomotives is my favorite part of the hobby. These are freelance, so I can build exactly what I like. All of my models are battery powered and radio controlled. I believe that without prototype drawings to follow, freelance modeling becomes an art form, and that I find very satisfying. The steel truss bridge. This is an almost 20-year-old scratch-built, 5-foot-long plastic model of a steel bridge, which is still in use. The base under the track is a square plastic downpipe for strength. The rail motor was built from a Revel kit of a very early Paris City bus. The original Patio station. All these buildings are commercial models. Some have been repainted, and I've added some signage. The rail motor was kit bashed from a Bachmann trolley, and the locomotive is the iconic LGB Mogul repainted. The ground cover in this case is Irish moss. DNR number 4 is an English inside cylinder 440 colonial engine, scratch built on a Kalamazoo motor block. Colonial engines are usually normal European designs, but could have cow catchers, air brakes, headlights, bells, and other accoutrements needed in the bush. It's sitting on a scratch model of a seller's turntable. These were manufactured of cast iron in the US and shipped worldwide as kits in the late 19th century. I've seen a number of these in Australia and New Zealand. Raising the Dunkley Northern Railway. This project started when my knees told me I had to raise the railway before I turned 70. This is my August 2012 Garden Railways article showing how it was done. A diagram of the raised DNR. The mainline loop is raised about 3 feet with grades up to 3% and runs through the train room bottom left. Some of the branch line running from the train room to Newton bottom right is on the ground, but easily accessible for maintenance. Newton is a dual gauge 3-foot 6 gauge and 4-foot 8.5 gauge transfer yard. It is also the headquarters of the Consolidated Concentrates Conglomerate. The CCC is a US-owned mining company operating in the colony. This gives me an excuse to build and run US-built models, US-built equipment, as well as the European equipment. The construction. The gray material is a 5.5 inch by 1 inch, 20-foot long cellular PVC board on edge, manufactured by TimberTech. Trex won't work in this application because it can't be bent like this. It's mounted on 2 3/8 inch diameter steel chain link fence posts placed 6 feet apart and set in concrete. Some of the TimberTech board was sawn in half lengthways and mounted with screws on edge, with screws on each side of the vertical board at the top to form the rail base. The method of joining the vertical boards is shown to the right. This is a portion of the completed rail base leading to one of the tables. These tables are where the passing loops and towns are located. The completed table at Blue Spruce. The tops of these tables are cement board as used on bathroom walls. It's properly supported underneath and covered with rolled roofing. This had lasted almost 20 years without any problems. In an abundance of caution, I built these tables with wood posts, and so far they have been okay. But if I did it all again, I'd probably use steel. The train is on the completed main line. The branch line to Pacio and Newton is to its right. The steel posts and the PVC structure were painted with Krylon rattle cans and have not been repainted since they were built. The City of Wombat. The office buildings are kit-bashed commercial model building fronts mounted on plain styrene boxes in the rear. The headquarters of the Dunkley Northern Railway is the center building. All the buildings on the railway are lighted. The ground cover is the much maligned local native moss, which I've come to love. The Wombat station is completely scratch-built in styrene. I copied the design from a photograph. Another view of the town of Wombat. The feed store to the right is a kit-bashed and repainted commercial model. Unfortunately, this truck is one of the few trucks available in this scale and era. Wombat's Old Town. This was how Wombat looked when the railway was on the ground. It has now been repurposed as a part of the new version of the town. DNR rail motor number 5 and trailer at Wombat. The body consists of 3 Baldwin cabs from Bachmann 460s. The trailers like this were often seen in Europe, but they would be a very rough ride. The engine terminal at Wombat. Except for the combine and the Morris Minor, most everything in this picture is from scratch. Number 104 is one of the CCC's US outline locomotives. Details of its construction will be covered in later in this presentation. CCC's Pacific number 114, seen here in the Wombat Engine Facility, was built on a Bachmann 460 chassis with a trailing truck added. This is the other end of the Wombat Engine Facility, showing its turntable and engine house. To the right is DNR number 15, a 262 plus 262 Garrett locomotive. It's named Herbert William, after its designer Herbert William Garrett, and was built on two LGB 062 European tank chassis. This is the first of 5 Garrett types locomotives that I've built. There we go. My scratch-built coal loader at the Wombat Engine Facility is being worked by DNR number 3, an 042 well tank switcher that was built on an LGB 040 chassis and has a Baldwin cab. The Baldwin cab idea came from a Cuban railroad. A little humor and some clutter, and my new friend, the moss. Most of the stuff in this picture is commercially available. The Maldu Coal Company mine at Blue Spruce. The design of this mine came from my hanging out around a bunch of coal mines in Oz when I was a kid. It's all styrene, and the track on the loading trestle supporting the skips is N gauge. Blue Spruce Station. A view from the mine at Blue Spruce Station of a diesel box cab on a passenger train at the station. There is something a little ironic about the vintage diesel locomotive at a coal mines station. Blue Spruce's company town. These are all repainted and leaded commercial models with small modifications. The coal mine is at the other end of town. The town of Backfence. This is also mostly kit-bashed commercial models. The tunnel is through a large lace leaf shrub. This is the other end of Backfence Tunnel. It's about 5 feet long, and the interior walls are wire mesh. On the siding, not far from Backfence Station, is Red Barn's Supply. It's a kit-bashed LGB Red Barn. A second look at the layout drawing. Backfence is at the top, Blue Spruce in the middle, Wombat at the left, the train room is bottom left. My workshop and the in-shed station are in this room. The branch line to Patio is lower right, and the connector to Newton and his dual gauge transfer yard is located far right. Cherry Stump Resort is in between Wombat and Backfence. It's a dollhouse with a back wall installed to keep out the critters. The little glass building is a Christmas candle holder. The resort has a private railway station where the trains won't stop unless you have a reservation and won't let you leave unless you have a paid-up receipt. When all this is lighted at night, it's a very pleasant sight. The town of Newton. The town and the CCC's mine is to the right. The engine terminal is bottom left. The yard is almost all dual gauge, 3'6" and 4'8.5" track and switches. The inset picture shows the size difference between a standard gauge boxcar and gondola at the rear and a narrow gauge boxcar in front of the locomotive. CCC's Mike number 104 and Mally number 110 are getting underway from the concentrates facility at Newton with a heavy mineral train. The mine building is totally freelance and scratch-built of styrene. The rail at the top of the bunker for the skips is O-gauge in this instance. This is the town of Newton, which is the end of the standard gauge and the connection to my 3'6" gauge railway. The freelance two-story building is the headquarters of the CCC. The tunnel to the far right is the standard gauge connection to the rest of the world, and fittingly ends in a US mailbox. CCC's kit-bashed standard gauge switcher number 213 is kit-bashed from a meter gauge LGB model. This required longer axles being made and a conversion from outside to inside frame. Standard gauge and narrow gauge couplers are installed at both ends. The standard gauge one in the middle is from LGB, and the narrow gauge ones on each side are modified Bachmann. It all works very well. The Newton engine terminal with its dual gauge engine house and let me start that again. The Newton engine terminal with its dual gauge engine house and turntable. The dual gauge main line and switches are to the right. CCC's 2660 Mally number 110 is built on an LGB European Mally tank engine chassis. The gallows turntable is all styrene and its bearing is from a kitchen cabinet Lazy Susan. I have 3 of these outside, and they are bulletproof if kept well lubricated. The 4 rails are required on the turntable so that it lines up in both directions. If there were 3 rails, it would only line up in one direction. The draw. This is how to get from 3 rails to 4 rails to match the turntable. This is called a draw. Directed by a guide rail, top center, the flanges of the narrow gauge vehicle are pulled across to the inside of the other narrow gauge rail. This centers the vehicle on the turntable. There are 2 of these in the Colorado Railway Museum in Golden, Colorado, and many more in Melbourne, Australia's Southern Cross Station for its dual gauge 5'3" and standard gauge track. This is a bird's eye view of my draw. Note there are no moving parts. An arrow points to the guide rail, which is the key to the whole thing. If the wheel gauge is correct, it works every time. CCC's 2440 Malley number 106. The length and boiler, the cab, the tender, and the tender body are from a Delton 280. The chassis are from Bachmann 040s. This is an example of the moss ground cover late in the summer. DNR 282 plus 282 Garrett number 18 is built on two LGB 080 chassis with pilot and trailing trucks added. This is the largest engine on the railway. The custom number plates and builder plates are from Narrow Planet in the UK. I use these on most of my non-US steam engines. The passenger cars are kit-bashed LGB and look a little like some that used to operate in South Africa. The Garrett is exiting another lace relief tunnel. The picture also shows how the railway infrastructure has stood up after nearly 20 years. CCC's Premier Train. The observation car is a kit-bashed Bachmann coach with three of their caboose cupolas creating the dome. The drumhead is also Bachmann. The other cars are rare LGB vehicles that were made with enclosed vestibules. They have been lengthened by two windows. All of my passenger cars are lighted with 9-volt batteries in prototypical gold battery boxes underneath. DNR's 442 plus 244 Garrett number 17 was built on two Bachmann 460 chassis with one driving axle removed. Garretts are very stable at high speed, but only a few of them were built to take advantage of this. My locomotive represents one of those. This is also a rare wheel arrangement for a Garrett, which was another good reason to build it. The passenger cars are kit-bashed LGB. I also built some custom six-wheel trucks for a few of them. DNR's 262 vintage box cab number 23 at Bluespur Station. It's built on a USA Trains 3-axle diesel truck with custom side frames, plus pilot and trailing wheel. I like these so much that I have 3 of them and they are all powered. The passenger cars are Bachmann open platform cars with closed vestibules added to achieve a more mainline look. This rail brush is very useful, especially after there's been a little wind. The mechanics of it is a commercial product. I've had a custom body and chassis. I also kit bashed the tender. The brush itself is battery powered. It is pushed by my Crocodiesel, an LGB model of a Swiss Crocodile electric locomotive converted to diesel electric power. There was a prototype for this in South America built by the Swiss in the 1930s. The train room. The interior is insulated and heated. The mainline loop runs through it on the left, and the exit tunnel is at the end. The 3-rail track is for testing standard gauge models. The train room looking the other way, with the other exit tunnel to the right of the door. The vehicles on the upper shelf have narrow wood strips between the wheels to keep them from touching each other. The shelves are all slightly sloped to the rear, so the vehicles won't fall off if we have an earthquake. The room is L-shaped, and to the left of the door is my workbench. The station in this room is called in-shed. This is the workbench area, which I also use for an office. It also shows a fraction of my automobile collection, which are all the same scale as the railway. The construction of CCC's Mikado number 104. The loco here is mostly assembled and shows some of its component parts. The boiler is plexiglass tubing, as is the smoke box, though it's slightly smaller. At this stage, styrene boiler spans are also installed, and some of the piping has yet to be added. A lot of the parts are from Bachmann's 460. Most of the brass bits are from trackside details. As with most of my models of US engines, the Bachmann 460 cab is shortened by one window to make it a little less Baldwin. This is because I could only find Alco builder's plates of sufficient quality. All the rivets I use on my models are from plastic and are from Grant Line. They make 3 sizes. I install these individually into drilled holes and then carefully glue them into place. The Vanderbilt tender. The tube and the end cap are from Plastruct, and I added the rivets. The trucks are Bachmann with Ozark leaf springs added to them. I do this on all of my tenders to give the standard Bachmann freight trucks I use a sturdier look. I also mostly use Bachmann couplers on the railway, which I modify to make them more reliable. This is the Barry's Big Trains motor block with its vertical motor, wheels, and main rods that came with it. The rest of the rods and valve gear will be from Bachmann. You are looking through the plexiglass boiler and can see an air tank on the other side. The completed locomotive sitting on the Wombat turntable awaiting paint. I think this looks much better without paint, but obviously it would look silly on a train. A portrait of the completed engine. The green boiler has become the standard for the CCC. I paint everything with rattle cans and use paint pens for lining. All my lettering is done using individual model graphics rub-on letters. The brass number plates on the cab are from trackside details. The loco elevator. These locos are heavy and somewhat fragile. So to avoid damaging them, I use this flush turntable also as a lift to get them up to a shelf. By treading on the pedal to the lower right inset photo, I lift the table to a height where I can turn it. DNR number 9 is here ready to be turned or lifted. This is a 280 English colonial engine built on LGB mogul chassis that was lengthened by one axle. The pedal has now lifted it to a convenient height so it can be turned easily. Using 2 hands, it can then be lifted to the level of a shelf where there is a choice of 2 tracks. It is then backed under its own power into place. And safely parked alongside the other engines. The upper shelf also gives you a closer look at how my rolling stock is stored. These vehicles represent a mixture of European and American designs on the same railway as it was in Australia when I was growing up. The Australian states were separate British colonies until 1901, when they combined to become an independent country. They shared 4 different railway gauges, and the equipment was mostly English, but somehow Baldwin had already snuck in. By the 1950s, when I was a kid, there was a wonderful mixture of British, American, German, and locally built equipment. There were even some 3-foot 6-inch gauge diesels with Swiss engines working in the desert. This may explain my interest in a variety of equipment you have seen in this presentation. Thank you again for visiting the Dunkley Northern Railway tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you, John. This is Robin Peel here. I've had the
Hi,
privilege
Robin.
of there are a few questions in the chat, John, and let me actually have a look here. Bill Hobbs asks, do you leave all the structures and details out year round, or do you bring them in the winter in our lovely Seattle weather?
Well, the only thing that stays out in the winter is the track.
Okay.
Everything else is brought inside, and these days I don't have as much buildings, etc., out there.
Okay. And actually, Bill Hobbs also asked, and I was curious about this, how much do those locomotives weigh? I know you mentioned they were heavy to lift and somewhat fragile, and that's why you use that loco lift.
You know, I can't tell you. They're heavy. You can't pick them up with one hand, I'll tell you that. But you hold it. I don't have a clue.
Okay. I love that loco lift you have, the little foot pedal to at
Yes.
least elevate it, and then you just pull it up by hand, I guess, to take it up to the top shelf.
Yes, there's actually a latch, and as you lift it to the top and it's sitting on the shelf,
Yeah.
the post at the bottom drops into a slot,
Okay.
which you release with your knee and then drop it down again. Yes.
Oh, that's good because I'd be frightened of having it up there and it going back down again. So,
No, that's never happened. It slipped once or twice when it's been on the turntable, when it's a turntable, but when it's up there, it's never come down.
cool. And Gerald Harper, one of fellow Colonial, right? He says, do you hand lay your track or do you use commercial flex track? And how did you do the dual gauge track?
Oh, it's all commercial track from
Okay.
Lagos Creek. The dual gauge switches were built by Lagos Creek. The dual gauge track was hand laid. The switches were made for me out of resin, and by drilling a tinier hole, I can drive spikes into the resin. So it's spiked in through the resin.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it's been like that for, again, almost 20 years. The
Yeah.
resins tended to warp a little bit at times, and I've had to hold some of it down a little bit, few of it down with screws, but the spikes actually, and I've done metal spikes and in emergencies, even on the plastic ties,
Okay.
the normal commercial plastic ties.
And they still bite, they still hold.
Yeah, they'll still hold enough, as long as you drill a hole small enough.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's got some good friction on it.
Right.
Yeah, Steve Hollenbach, who was on earlier, says great layout, and Jake Sweeney says amazing amount of concept, engineering, design, and construction. Very nice to see. And yeah, I'd agree with all those comments. It's a lovely layout to actually see, and I always love looking at the garden layouts 'cause, it just looks so realistic, even though some of the bushes are out of scale. Your mind ignores that, and it just looks really natural being out there in natural light. So it's really good to see.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with you about that.
Yeah. Well, that's it for the questions. So, hey, John, glad to see it and hopefully get up there this summer and see the layout again. But thank you for that.